Hello everyone, and welcome to the introductory module for the human-centered design portion of the junior design class at Georgia Tech. The purpose of this module is to give you an overview of the concept of human-centered design. We're going to take a look at a few different frameworks and then look specifically at what we're going to explore in the condensed version that we'll be using in this class. Let's dive right in. At the end of this module, you should be able to do the following. First is to describe the universal features of human-centered design. And then the second thing is to be able to understand the class-specific features of human-centered design. Now, this concept of designing products centered on the customer is not novel. A bunch of different people have looked through it in a variety of different lenses. So let's take a look at a few of these frameworks and see what they all have in common before we define what we're going to look specifically in this class. Let's take a look at this first example here. So you start with a phase that they call planning. It's kind of hard to see in the screen, so I'll just read it out loud. And then that goes into this next cycle here that consists of learning and then co-creating, followed by testing, measuring, and then after you've gone through enough iterations and you know what you want to do, you move on to the scaling phase. In another example that I'm showing here, you see a set of similar elements. First, there's a discovery phase that results in some understanding, and then based on that understanding, you create a set of solutions. And then in the end, once you have it set up, you implement it. And then you see these dashed lines here that imply a kind of iterative nature. Arguably, the most common framework for human-centered design that comes out of Stanford consists of these 5 steps that you see here. They start with empathize, or getting a deep understanding of the customer. And then after that, you define the scope of the problem that you want to solve, followed by a disciplined ideation process where you come up with different solutions. You create prototypes of this, and then with these prototypes, you test. And then, like with all of the other frameworks, there's a certain amount of iteration between the different stages implied in these frameworks. So our course is going to be a condensed version of this Stanford approach, but due to the limited time we have available in this class, we're only going to do a few sub-steps involved in this cyclical process. Before we go into the process specific for this class though, let's take a look and see what all of these have in common. The first step is you'll see there's a discovery process. That's common within all of these. This involves direct engagement with the customer and developing a deep understanding for not just the problems and pain points that they face, but have it be based on the processes that they go through every day to accomplish their goals. The second is there is some kind of ideation phase where you look specifically at a variety of disciplines that you would use to generate your solutions and create prototypes. The third thing, and probably the most important, is that there is a lot of testing and evidence-based processes so that you can verify not just your assumptions, but also the effectiveness of your solutions. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the processes specific to this class. The first thing is that we're going to start out in the definition portion of customer discovery. We're going to center that around a business thesis that takes the form of X will buy Y because of Z. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the next module. Now, based on this thesis, we're going to build a bunch of hypotheses that will support this thesis. So you come up with a bunch of hypotheses where if they are all true, then we will feel pretty good about this business thesis. The next step is we're going to explore 2 ways to prove or disprove this hypothesis. The first is to actually conduct interviews with people involved in the product that you have in mind. This is going to be a smaller scaled down version of a process called customer discovery, The general idea of customer discovery is that there are hidden bits of insights that you can only get by conducting interviews and directly discussing the process with the customer that will give you an unfair advantage in the product that you ultimately develop and try to sell to your market. The other approach that we'll use to verify hypotheses is by using what we call a minimum viable product, or an MVP. The idea about this is that you don't want to build the entire Roman aqueduct in one day. What you want to do is you want to come up with small-scaled versions that are low cost and easy to implement, specifically for the purpose of testing these hypotheses. That way, you're not betting the farm on your business idea in the very beginning, but rather you're slowly ratcheting up the amount that you're investing in it by creating these gradually more elaborate prototypes and confirming your various hypotheses before you take the plunge. In the case of this class, we're only going to do the interviews, and then we're going to come up with an idea of what our initial MVP is going to be, and then with that, we're going to present the findings. So the general make-believe scenario that we're going to take is that you are looking to start a company. You actually already have some people that are bought in. You're going to formulate your business thesis, hypothesis, and get some initial evidence by conducting interviews. And then with that, you have a plan for what your next step is in your customer discovery process, and you are giving an update to the people that are backing you in this venture. And that's where we're going to pause to conclude this class. Ordinarily, in a business school, just this stage here where you're conducting interviews and accepting or rejecting hypotheses can be an entire semester-long process. So you can see how we're only going to get a very small flavor of that in this course. That said, our hope is that at the end of this very short experience, you'll at least understand and have some experience in the first few steps of this customer discovery process. And by knowing what the universal elements are, you'll know how to use a scientific method approach to exploring future ideas that you might have over the course of your career. In the next module, we'll be talking more about how to do the upper half of this diagram, which will set you up on a good path to accomplish the rest of the objectives for this portion of the class.